Hello, everyone. My name is Jeffrey Schiffer, and I'm the Executive Director at Native Child and Family Services of Toronto. Over the last 3 months, we've been working with the city alongside many other partners to support Indigenous children and families through COVID-19. In honor of National Indigenous Peoples Day, we asked Mayor John Tory if he would join us in a discussion on reconciliation and Indigenous innovation in the context of COVID recovery. Mayor Tory, thank you so much for making some time to join me today.
It's my pleasure, Jeffrey, and thank you for all the work that Native Child and Family Services is doing to be our partners. And we'll talk about that because that's been a big feature of what we've done during COVID and hopefully long to follow in the days after.
Thank you. Yeah. So I wanted to start just by acknowledging that the city has taken significant steps over the last 3 months to engage Indigenous organizations and community in discussions about COVID-19 response and recovery. What role do you see Indigenous organizations playing as you continue to lead our city through COVID-19 recovery?
Well, I think one of the great lessons we've learned from the pandemic, and the pandemic's been an awful experience, especially for more marginalized and vulnerable people, including some of our Indigenous peoples and others. But I think one of the lessons we have learned is when you form partnerships with those organizations and you actually let them set the agenda to a greater extent, and we're there kind of as the supporting partner as opposed to the leading partner, that you produce something that not only has more effective results, but that you produce something that can be sustained. Because in the end, I think so much, and you might say, well, how come I'm just coming to this revelation now after 6 years as mayor? And I wasn't in government before that to any extent at all. I've worked around government, but I think we've never been through anything like this that was quite as devastating and quite as far reaching, so that we had almost of necessity to reach out, because we couldn't possibly, as a government or any of the governments, have done all of this on our own, because there were just too many people too adversely affected by this. And what you've discovered is that when you rely on these other organizations to be the real partners, as we're really delivering, and when you play a supporting role, that you emerge with something that is not only good during the pandemic or the emergency or the the sort of acute problem, whatever that might be, but you've got something that's actually a sustainable model to take you forward. And to me, it was one thing for us to be able to provide for and support people during the pandemic. It was another one entirely to sort of say, can we carry this forward? We're spending a lot of our time right now thinking about ways in which we can make permanent things like mental health, where we set up a number of people could call with mental health problems and they could get a direct transfer to someone who could help them. But we set it up sensitive to the fact that there are different groups out there that have different kinds of mental health needs. We did the same with food security. And we've been involved with you in a partnership that has to do with the need for kids to get out and be in open space, because a lot of them are living in circumstances where they just don't have that opportunity. So, I think it's really been great for us to see that if you rely on partners and make them true partners, in fact, you make them in effect the senior partners of these relationships, you will probably have something you can carry forward and sustain well into the future and continue to provide that support, on a permanent basis, if I can call it that, as opposed to just during a pandemic.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think it's an exciting time for the city with the new Indigenous Affairs Office getting off the ground, doing excellent work, and really changing and supporting the relationship that the city has between a lot of Indigenous partners. I'm just wondering, throughout that work, how is your concept or understanding of reconciliation changing? What does reconciliation mean to you in the context of this pandemic?
Well, I mean, it's about respect and it's about collaboration. It's about exactly what we were just talking about a minute ago. I mean, it's about partnership, because, reconciliation, yes, was born out of a deep regret of things that happened in the past that many of us weren't even around for. Although I would point out that I've learned enough to know that that was going on in my lifetime, which is a shocking kind of admission for us all to make. I went up north to one of the remote communities, about 2 years ago now. And I sat and listened to a residential school survivor describe the whole experience to me. And I probably learned more from that conversation than I did reading the Truth and Reconciliation report about the utter disrespect and disregard, for people's humanity and human rights that was shown and so forth. But so how do you sort of go forward and sort of demonstrate that you're truly trying to reconcile? Yes, you can say certain things, you can pass motions and all this sort of thing. But I think if you form true, respectful, collaborative partnerships, as I've said, we're doing, in a number of these different areas, including with your organization, I think that's the best way that you can go forward and say, there's a role for us to play in providing support. It's not kind of a hands-off thing saying, well, we're just going to sort of leave everything as it is and let you figure it out. It is actually quite different than that. It is actually saying, we're going to treat you as partners. We're going to be sensitive to your unique needs for different kinds of support than other people might need. You know, I'll be honest, I was on a round table that I know you were a part of, where I was listening to sort of the impact of the pandemic on the Indigenous communities in Toronto. And before I had that roundtable, I hadn't thought to go look and see, with this money that was being distributed out to organizations, community organizations across the city of all different kinds, you know, serving all kinds of different communities, what was being allocated to our Indigenous communities. And the fact that I went and looked, and I learned something from that whole exercise, but the bottom line is I think there's now a different kind of allocation than there might have been. But I think it's because oftentimes people don't think about it in the context of, especially in an urban context, they don't think about it. It's something that's happening somewhere else. They don't think about the urban Indigenous communities that exist, and some of their incredibly acute needs that they have. So to me, it's respectful, collaborative, partnership, you know, behavior that I think epitomizes the spirit of reconciliation. And it's not being done out of guilt. You know, there's a certain degree of guilt that goes with all of us for things that happened in the past. It goes out of looking forward and saying that we're going to reconcile. We're going to form those partnerships and form that collaboration. And it's working. You know, it's working. What I said earlier about what's gone on during the pandemic has said to me that when you approach it in that spirit and not worry sort of who the senior partner is going to be, in fact, you actually want the community itself to be the senior partner in driving forward the initiative that you're undertaking, it's going to be more effective. It's going to work. It's going to have the confidence of the people you're supporting. And to me, that's very much in the spirit of reconciliation.
Thank you. Yeah. We are looking a lot at other countries and how far they are in the pandemic response. You know, one notion that we have at Native Child is that there's a lot of Indigenous knowledge and practice that can help COVID-19 response and recovery. I'm just wondering if there's anything innovative that you've noticed in the responses that Indigenous communities and organizations have taken that you think all Torontonians could benefit from.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with, I'm trying to think of the right word. I was thinking it was customization, but it is the fact that who knows best. You know, we often assume in government, and by the way, I think the same is true in business because I led a big company as well, that a sort of one size fits all solution will work just fine. And it's simpler, you know, and government especially sort of says, well, we're going to have one kind of program here, or we're going to fund under one set of criteria, when in fact, you come to realize, and I think the pandemic has certainly brought it home to me, that if you're talking about food security, yes, it's a commonly shared issue, but the way in which people experience it, the way in which you address it, the way in which you even deliver support for people is going to be different. I mean, even just the pure delivery channel, in other words, how do you get the food hamper to the intended beneficiary, is different from community to community. There's a different network, there's different locations that people are in. And I think what the Indigenous organizations have shown to me, and I think in a way it's a reflection as well, I've learned a little bit, not a lot over my time. I was, if you go all the way back to 1981, I was the Associate Secretary of the Cabinet for what they then called Aboriginal Affairs. And so I started learning then, and it's been a continuous learning experience since. And you don't learn much relative to what you could know. I pointed out as well, by the way, that when I was a history student in the 1970s at the U of T studying Canadian history, if we spent a half an hour out of years of history study, if I spent a half an hour studying anything to do with Indigenous people, it was only by accident. And it wasn't because I chose to, it's because that was the course content. But what you learn is the community itself is so incredibly diverse that you're best then to go to these organizations and say, okay, we want to help you with food security. You're going to design the program, the delivery mechanism, and so on. What we're going to supply is funding and other support to help you deliver and design and make that program work. And so to me, the innovative capacity of the Indigenous communities is almost unlimited because they are so diverse, and they have to come up with a solution to each of these, or a program to assist each of these areas that is, you know, unique. And so you end up with far more different kinds of programs, but they're all trying to achieve the same end. And I think the creativity that I've seen has been has been incredible, and it really proves that if you form these true responsive, sensitive partnerships, that will work better for everybody, including the city.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic, thank you. So we do know that this is a challenging time for Indigenous children and families in the city. I just wanted to ask if you had any particular message that you'd like to deliver on Indigenous Peoples Day to Indigenous children and families here in the city of Toronto.
You know, it's really what you've just heard me saying. I think for years, what you had was that maybe the urban Indigenous communities were kind of almost an afterthought. I mean, you know, and I'm not even sure, to be really honest, when I was a business leader or a lawyer, that I could have named the number of urban Indigenous people who live in this city. or that I would necessarily have known of the incredible marginalization they face, both for historical reasons and even current reasons in the 21st century. And I think if I had a message, is to say that we really want to engage with you. We have seen now that when we do engage with you and let you be in the driver's seat, and we are the supporting actors in all this, instead of government trying to dictate or to determine or to set out, criteria that apply to everybody, it works better. And it produces meaningful results. And the meaningful results are quite straightforward. I mean, yes, they start with just being able to have basics like the program we work on together between your organization and the city, which is to provide just sort of access to green space and being outside and so on, just a healthy basic for all children.
Mhm.
But it goes all the way through to the most important thing, I think, in the end, which is, that these children feel they have the same sense of opportunity to be whatever they want to be and to pursue a life that is as blessed as the life that can be pursued by many other people. And, I think we've come to recognize that if we want to not just be the most diverse city in the world, which is a fact, but we want to be the most inclusive city in the world, then we have to look at each group. And some people misinterpret this and say, well, what you're doing is catering to them, or what it in fact is you're just saying that everybody's needs are different. My needs are different than your needs, which are different than the clients you serve, which are different than people that we're trying to support in the Black community, or name any other of the subsets of communities that make us the most diverse city in the world. And I think if we sort of say, well, we want to engage people, but then we do it, and we do it in a way that's going to best produce results of engagement, and produce that opportunity for these kids, that is something that I want to convey, that we want to engage. We want to engage for a reason, which is so that you can live a good life, and a life that is consistent with your own ambitions and aspirations. And I speak to the adults there because the children wouldn't be listening to this, but for your children. We can solve some of the problems that some of the adults have today, but the ones where we're going to be able to get a fresh start, because it does take time, are going to be, I think, the kids that are growing up today. And there are quite a few of them. It's one of the fastest growing areas of our population. And I think people don't realize that either. Not so much maybe here, but certainly in parts of the province where there are other kids from Indigenous communities that are numerous and that face many challenges like they do here in the big city.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mayor Tory, for your time today.
I'm looking forward, and what I'm looking forward to is that maybe you can have me come, and I've had the same conversation with Lindsay at Task, but I'd like to come and see some of the programs, because again, how will I know? I've been to 100 programs involving kids and animating kids and supporting kids and nurturing kids, but I haven't been to one in the Indigenous communities. And until if I want to sort of be true to my own words that I've just spoken, I better come and see how you do it in the context of, because there are going to be differences for reasons that are obvious and that I've stated today. So please do invite me. And I just thank you again for the work that you're doing and that your organization is doing, and for this spirit of collaboration that I think is growing, and I hope we can keep it growing. That's certainly my intent.
Thank you. We will certainly invite you to come and see some of our programs. So Thank you so much, and I hope you have a lovely afternoon. Yeah.
I hope you do too. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Thanks for inviting me. Okay. Thanks a lot. Bye now.